So we have a quorum. Welcome everybody to our board meeting for Monday, May 15th. It's about 9:37 a.m. and we have a quorum present. So the first item of business is folks have a chance to take a look at the minutes from our last meeting. And are there any conflicts? And if the minutes are okay, I'll entertain a motion on them.
Mayor Silvestrini, this is Scott Phillips. I make a motion to approve the minutes. I have read them through and they seem accurate to me.
Thank you, Scott. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, awesome. Those are approved. So then let's move on to boards and appointments. So
Liam not on.
Liam's on.
Is he? He was.
I'm here. I'm online.
Oh, cool. Then I won't fill in for you, Liam. It's all you.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you could have handled the one name, but I'll get it done quickly here. So we're still working on some of our remaining boards and commissions, but we do have a recommendation today for the Uniform Building Code Commission. We are recommending that Mayor Burton fill that position with his personal experience in the area and with his personal experience. Oops, sorry, I just got off the screen. Oh, there you go. With his personal experience there. And we'll also be looking to fill the Utah Indigent Defense Commission. We're still working on that one. We're gathering some names and we should be there soon. But for right now, we are recommending that the board appoint Mayor Burton to the Uniform Building Code Commission.
Well, Mayor Burton is a master electrician. I think he'd be good person to fill that with his building expertise. So work for a motion to appoint him.
I move approval as stated.
Okay, second.
Okay, thank you. Motion and second to appoint Mayor Burton to the Building Code Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Liam.
We also have on that boards and commissions memo the appointment to the vacancy for a town representative, which was vacated by former Snowville Mayor Gwen Wilson. We have joining us today as well Tory Mayor Mickey Wright, who we are recommending to fill that position. Mayor Wright has worked closely on short-term rentals and the impact of tourism on small communities. Tory is a gateway community to Capitol Reef, and we recommend that he fills that vacancy.
Okay, I'll take a motion to appoint Mayor Wright to represent the towns on the board.
I'll move to appoint Mayor Wright.
Second.
A motion and second to appoint Mayor Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations or condolences, Mayor Wright.
Mayor Wright,
Welcome aboard.
Mayor Wright, can you take a moment to introduce yourself to the rest of the league board here? You've got mayors from Logan to Provo. You have council members from Cedar City to Bountiful, and just take a minute to introduce yourself and why you're excited to join us.
Sure. Well, I lived in the Wasatch Front for 31 years, 30 in Sandy, as a software engineer for various companies, and then transitioned to cybersecurity for 20 years. And I retired with my wife retiring from the VA in 2018, moved to Torrey, which we had discovered decades before. And we just started getting involved with things down here. And all of a sudden I was the chair of planning and zoning. And shortly after that, folks asked me to run for mayor, which I did, and somehow I won. And that was about a year ago. And been trying to figure out how to control growth or not grow and make everybody happy, which is a fun job.
Let us know how you have accomplished it. Okay, we can use some pointers.
I will, yes. And I will take any suggestions.
Well, Mayor Wright, this is Cameron, and thanks for your willingness to join the league board to represent towns. The league board consists of mayors and council members from all 8 regions of the state. And so your region will now have double coverage But you're here as well as representing towns, and our constitution requires the towns with populations of less than 1,000 have a dedicated spot on the board. Likewise, cities of first and second class have guaranteed spots on the board. Just a quick note, one of my favorite Tory moments was a decade ago where we thought we were coming down to do a training for the planning commission, and Meg Ryan and I walked into an angry mob of people who were frustrated about, you're nodding your head, you probably heard about this meeting, but Tory services or provides water outside of Tory boundaries. And so it ended up in a meeting about water law that Meg and I didn't realize until we walked in, and annexation, and basically all of Wayne County was in this meeting to hear from Meg and me. And Mayor Dorsey, have you met Adis Dorsey, the former mayor?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor Dorsey pulled us
Yep.
aside as we walked in and said, oh, by the way, the purpose of the meeting has changed. Can you do this now? So I was, yeah, it was they had to move it to the old schoolhouse because City Hall wasn't big enough, but it was a great day. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going through that right now. And we're discussing increasing the water rates and reducing how much water people get to use, and trying to figure out what to do with the large area outside of Tory Town that we serve.
Yep. So it's old as new again, because that was the first of that meeting a decade ago. And but Tory's a beautiful place. We're happy to have you on the board.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on the board.
Thank you very much.
The thing that always resonates with me is how much our issues are the same. There are lots of folks dealing with water rates up here too, and yeah, the stuff that we do has a lot of commonality. So welcome aboard. Okay,
Thanks.
is Liam anything, or Nick, anything else on that? Nope. Okay.
Mayor, the one thing I'll add on the Indigent Defense Commission is we have been trying for months to fill this spot. I made a big push at the Municipal Attorneys Conference a couple of weeks ago, and it's been really difficult to find anybody who's interested in serving this. So if you know of any attorneys in your offices that would be interested, this is a state commission, provides funds to local governments for indigent defense. And it's important that we have we have 2 city voices, only one of which is filled right now. So it's every turn we've gone, we've been told no. So if you know of somebody in one of your cities that, the preference is an attorney who maybe has some criminal prosecution background, but also can just provide that local government perspective. We'd love to have a second person. Right now, Ryan Luce, who is the city attorney of South Jordan, is our lone representative. The previous representative stepped down about maybe 6 months ago. I mean, it's been a while, and it's been unfilled.
But I just indicate this, I think this is an important position because there are conversations ongoing about justice court reform, and indigent defense is like one of the 3 legs of that stool with the court and the prosecution. So I think it merits, we want to be fully represented in that conversation. Okay, so let's talk about advocacy and engagement and a mid-year conference feedback. We had, I think, more attendees at the mid-year conference in St. George than ever before. People probably don't tell me the honest truth, but the people that did approach me said that they thought it was a good conference. I don't really have a reason to think that they lie about that, but maybe they wouldn't say anything. but anyway, I thought it was good. I thought that the keynote speaker, Tim Shriver, was excellent, and that his remarks resonated with a lot of people. I got a lot of feedback about that. It was all positive. So, Kim, what else you got on that?
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for everybody who was able to join us. It was a record-setting conference, more attendees than ever before. And what we hope to accomplish here in the next hour or so is we are going to summarize, and it's in the board packet, the feedback that we heard from you as board members for the coming year in the advocacy, engagement, and operations space. So we'll take a moment to make sure we hit all those points that you guys raised. And then the second piece that's listed as part 2 is we'll pivot to discuss some of the policy input that we've heard from the members. We made a concerted effort over the last 2 months since the end of the last legislative session through in-person meetings, survey results, Slido, and other things to get input from the members. And so again, we want to check check in with the board to see if there are any policy topics that we've missed that should be considered going forward. And we're not asking you to prioritize all of them today. We're going to do that at the June meeting. And that's because that fits better in the overall UEOC cycle, which we'll talk about in this section as well. And then part 3 in this section will be the board of directors objectives. So we laid those objectives out to you at the start of the April meeting, and then said we were going to bring them back to you, likely modified a little bit based on your input. And so we have those for you to approve during this meeting. And once we pivot from mid-year to the draft growth-related questions, that's where we'll talk about the UEOC, Commission on Housing Affordability, both of which are already underway. In fact, the UEOC, just at this point, we probably had at least five UEOC-related meetings in the last month.
Yeah, with another one tomorrow.
Another one tomorrow, and legislative meetings officially start tomorrow, and so we are fully into the 2024 session preparation. And so what we have put together for you in this section is a quartet of questions that we want all of our league representatives and all of the different UEOC and interim related meetings to have on the tip of their tongue. So we have our general prism that applies everywhere, but these 4 questions we think summarize the core issues from a city perspective. And so whether it's Justin in a meeting, me in a meeting, Mayor Ramsey, or whoever, we're all using that as the board framework. And we'd like to be able to present those to the LPC later today. And so this is what the board has approved as of this morning. So we normally at the main meeting, we would lead out with the tentative budget. The reason we reversed the sequence today is because Mayor Ramsey's hopping on a plane for DC in just a few minutes, and she wanted to be able to provide her 2 cents about where things are at with the UEOC, because she's been in all the meetings with us thus far. So we're going to do the advocacy engagement piece first, but then make sure we have sufficient time to have a good discussion about the tentative budget. But you'll see pieces in that tentative budget based on some of the feedback that you as a board gave us last month.
One of the things that I just want to say, I would compliment Cam, but through his advocacy, he also secured a little more voice for cities and towns with the Commission on Housing Affordability. So now Cam and I will have some advisory position there anyway, so we can sit in on meetings where like members of the team where we were before we were tending it, but always on the outside looking in kind of thing. So this will be better.
Yep, we succeeded at that last week. So any questions about just the overall objectives for the next little bit of the meeting before we dive into the details? Okay. In that case, let's jump in. So part 1 on the board breakout, I'll do that. And then when we get to part 2, I'll turn that over to Justin. And then I'll come back for part 3 on the board director's objectives. And then Justin and I will tag team the draft growth related questions. Also within the board breakout takeaways, Molly will chime in when we talk about the engagement piece, Carson on the research piece, Nick on the operations. So again, the primary objective here with part 1 is, did we miss anything? So Nick, will you slide down? Okay, perfect, you're there. So you'll see we broke down all of the feedback into the 3 divisions of advocacy, engagement, and operations. On the advocacy side, you can see we've organized it based on capital facing and member facing. You'll see in parentheses there are several pieces that are listed either as PRISM or the UEOC question. So we're trying to make sure that the messaging we're already doing is aligned. So my first question is there anything that we've missed from small group discussion at the last meeting in the advocacy section? And then Justin, I'll put you on notice to jump in on your thoughts about the capital facing piece in a second. But is there anything that immediately comes to mind that we missed in our summary of April's meeting in the advocacy section? So 1A and 1B.
Like it captures what I recall from that meeting.
Then in that case, Justin, do you want to just take a moment and talk about kind of our on the general messaging and the tactics, just in a quick maybe staff summary, and then Molly on the member facing piece, how that combined with the engagement piece fit into what we're looking for in a new communications person?
Yeah, just quickly on the general messaging, most of what we talked about really does fall within the general prism that we already use. You know, what's the problem we're trying to solve? One size misfits all. You know, we don't want the unfunded mandates. So there wasn't anything particularly new there. Some of it was, I think, talking about the tactics we use when we're hitting some of these. You know, how we need to use our data, how we need to, you know, show legislators what we're doing. So really, same question here. Was there anything, you know, as I know you all do, sit up at night and think, geez, how are we using our tactics about this? But was there anything here that since we've met as a board last month, that you've thought about things we need to hit, ways we need to hit things from a tactic perspective? Or anything you've seen come out of UEOC or interim so far that has made you think we need to approach stuff either in a different way or we need to keep doing stuff the same way?
I continue to be confused about how UEOC adds people to their work groups. The work groups that they have shown on screen seem to have like other people that get added, but never as much of our side as other sides.
I think that's accurate. I think there is a little bit of mystery to how they pick people. And they don't really have to show their work on this one. They can pick whoever they want to be on their committees because of the way the UEOC is set up. Like Mayor Silvestrini mentioned, I think we've been able to get our shoehorn our way in, maybe is a term in several of these. We kind of had what I call favored nation status in the UEOC. There's not really any other organization. I mean, UAC doesn't have it, special districts don't have it, that has the same amount of coverage that we do on all of the big groups and the working groups. But yes, to your overall point, how some people get in there, I have no idea.
So we have built a graphic we'll show in a moment of how all the pieces fit together.
Oh, I'm so excited.
You would be.
Finally.
Yeah.
It will clarify everything.
This is my Friday night building this graphic out to try to make it user friendly.
Yeah, we gotta talk about your work-life balance. The other thing I would just mention is, you know, municipal power cities are obviously a smaller subset of cities, but I was very disappointed and disillusioned at some of the study items that got thrown in the energy and water work group that seemed particularly focused to impact municipal power cities without a single municipal power city representative on that work group.
Well, since we've pivoted to UEOC, and I know Mayor Ramsey's got to get on a plane in a moment, Mayor Silvestrini, if it's okay with you, let's pivot to UEOC and then we'll come back to the board specific stuff, and that way Mayor Ramsey can chime in.
That's fine. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
So Mayor Ramsey, can I ask you to give your 2 cents, and then Nick, will you pull up the PowerPoint that has the UEOC graphic?
That's the slide you want.
Yeah. So Mayor Ramsey, the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry to not be there with you. I'm just wrapping up a beautiful hike through Salt Lake City as my gate was changed from A23 to B4. So that's awesome. UEOC, busy and happening fast. So there are several subgroups that have been created, and then a lot of working groups. So there's going to be a lot of people working, and I do appreciate that we have at least as much opportunity to be represented as we do. That took a lot of work. Cam's done a great job, and Justin, everybody working hard to try to make sure that we get representation. I'm out of breath. I'm carrying a 100,000-pound backpack, and I've been racing through the airport. Holy cow. Okay. Anyway, it's going to move fast. I think that's the key, that the timing is quick. And so it's really critical for us to get as much feedback as possible from all of you. We want the feedback. Cam, I appreciate that you framed the questions as a quartet, those 4 questions are critical. We want this feedback because there's not time for the grass to grow under our feet. This process is going to move quickly. It's intended to, and we've got a lot to keep up with. So just appreciate the discussion today and look forward. I am going to have to hop on a plane, but I'll get a recap of what you all said. And it's just critical to us that we get your input and represent your cities so that as we're bringing these ideas to the table, which I think we've got some really good ideas that we've already presented. I think we have a really good opportunity to be heard here and to weigh in, but it takes all of your help. So Cam, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to share, but there's lots of committees, lots of working groups, and we just need as much feedback as possible because the intention is that it's going to go fast.
Yeah, so it strikes me that we do have a few new people here, and although the UEOC has been around for a couple of cycles now, it is still kind of a newbie. So let's pull back for a second and review what the UEOC even is to begin with.
What does it stand for?
What does it even stand for, right? So UEOC is the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. So this commission was created, was it 3 years ago now? 3 sessions ago? 3 years ago now. And the chair of the commission is the governor. So Governor Cox is the chair. Speaker Wilson and President Adams of the Senate both sit on the committee. And then it's made up of again, Kate, I'm still not sure how they reach the conclusions of everybody that's on it, but a lot of cabinet members from the governor's office, some people from the community, and then UAC has a designee, and then Mayor Ramsey is our designee from the league. But we like to refer to it as sort of the shadow legislature, which, yes, I just said it in a public meeting, I don't care. But where they really go through and have all of these work groups throughout the year, work on a lot of various and sundry items, and then ultimately bring those back to either the interim is their goal this year, but in some cases just it ends up in the legislative session. And they're passing upwards of 20 bills when we finally get to the legislative session that originated with the UEOC. So this is a group that's sort of trying to hack the system. And it's odd that it's hacking the system given that the people sitting at the top of this committee are the system. This is sticking it to the man when you are the man. It's really weird. But this group is trying to do big things. Their goal is really to look at big issues.
Hey, how come I'm not part of this meeting?
Oh,
Justin, can we interrupt you really quick because a former league president would like to say hello?
I want to know why I'm not part of this meeting.
Oh, maybe they can't.
Congressman, you're always
Okay.
welcome.
Okay,
See
thank you.
you.
Okay, see you there.
So that's what UEOC is doing. When we look at this, what they do every year is they make a lot of working groups, kind of subcommittees, and then in those subcommittees they make smaller subcommittees, smaller working groups, however you want to look at them. And those are dissolved every year. They'll dissolve them in January, right before the legislative session, and then they will bring back a whole bunch of new ones. Now it's Corey. Everybody's joining.
Yeah, who's who there?
Seriously, you know
Seth?
which play is going back right now.
Are you behaving yourself?
Of course not.
I can't control the riffraff.
That's right.
I have no choice.
Seriously. Well, it's Congress. They don't know how to do work. It's okay.
good thing she's got an AirPod.
I would say it's fine. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But-
I heard
so-
that, but they didn't. Yeah.
I'll text it to Corey. But so anyway, so what we've got here is the overall UEOC. The groups that we have this year are the Government Efficiency Working Group. We had a Government Efficiency Working Group last year. The Innovation and Technology Working Group, that is a group we had last year. The Women, remind me what this full name is.
Women in the economy.
Women in the Economy, thank you. Water, Natural Resources. Now this one is a little bit different. Last year it was Water, Natural Resources. This year it's Water, Natural Resources and Energy Development. So you'll see on this one, we have water savings and water infrastructure, which are going to be fairly similar to last year. But energy transition and then nuclear energy were not issues we were talking about last year. And those are going to take a significant amount of energy, pun intended, for this committee. So Kate, I think that's what you were referencing earlier, is this group is going to be looking at things that will impact municipal power cities. And this is not something that this group has looked at before. Growth and transportation is a group that existed before. And Cam can talk a little bit more about what's going on in those. And then the Commission on Housing Affordability, the CHA. CHA used to be its own standalone commission, but it got put under the umbrella of the UEOC a couple of cycles ago. So CHA still does work on all the things that CHA's been doing for years, policy, funding, and data, but it is now under the larger UEOC. So with that, we do have people assigned to every one of these committees. So you can see for government efficiency, we have South Ogden City Manager Matt Dixon and the Cottonwood Heights Council Member Sean Newell. We have Kaysville Mayor and Board Member Tammy Tran for Innovation and Technology. Twilla Mayor Debbie Wynn on the Women in the Economy. For Water and Natural Resources, I'm involved there, as is Layton Council Member Tyson Roberts. On the commission, well, this is on Government and Transportation. Cam and Mayor Ramsey are both sitting on that one. And then for the CHA, there's a long list there. Orem Council Member Tom McDonald, Salt Lake City Representative Andrew Johnson, RDA Danny Waltz from Salt Lake also, Cameron Carson, and Mill Creek Mayor and Board President here, Jeff Silvestrini, are all involved there. So we are all over the UEOC. But everyone, we talk about this a lot, and the reason is because they're doing a lot and they're doing big things that are impacting our cities. These are not little one-off things. These are big bills that have wide-ranging impact. So that's the reason we're talking about this group so much, and that you'll hear us talk about it so much, is because this is where a lot of the big work is coming out.
Well, one of the things that I think, I mean, you talked about being a shadow legislature. That's not all a bad thing, I think. What this process has done, and that I've observed, is it's required ideas to go through some kind of a vetting process with at least the representatives that are at the table. And admittedly, we can always work on asking for that to be improved so that we get more stakeholders involved, with the right stakeholders at the table. But what this kind of does, I think, is it eliminates, it kind of filters a lot of these one-off anecdotal legislative initiatives that don't get legs like maybe they used to, because you can say, well, that didn't go through the CHA, or that didn't go through this. And so I think it actually kind of functions as a semi-interim study group. And
oh, we got a senator.
No.
They can hear you.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being nice to my friend Dylan.
Thank you, Senator.
thank you, Senator.
Well, they know we're having a board meeting. I think that's.
We're on the wrong flight.
Yeah, you are. This is the one.
Maybe you're on the right.
Yeah.
So very let me add to that. One of the huge advantages that we have utilized to the advantage of cities the last 2 years with the UEOC is the fact that normally we are advocates. Here we're participants. So in the traditional legislative process, you have 104 legislators, and we have to influence those 104 legislators. Well, we're still in that role, but Mayor Ramsey casts a vote at the UEOC level, and then all these subgroups of people sitting around the table, we're designated to be on those subgroups. So in the case of growth and transportation, for example, Mayor Ramsey and I are the two named city representatives on that 20 or so person growth and transportation group. The AOGs also have, not all the AOGs, but some of the AOGs also have representation there. And then you have the different subgroups. And we've already had the chance in the first growth and transportation meeting to bring up some of the input that came from the mid-year conference. Two examples. We met, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, a week and a half ago now, and Mayor Ramsey brought up a point that arose at the Rapid Growth Caucus, where there was discussion about the inability of fast-growing cities to afford enough or be able to acquire land for ball fields, sports fields because of land prices. So was there a way to partner with the state for revenue that could help acquire land for ball fields? So Mayor Ramsey brought that up and it made the brainstorm list in that first growth and transportation meeting. Another point that I brought up in that meeting came from the caucus of the cities of the first and second class, where we had discussion around zero fare transit. And there were some cities who said, we really want zero fare transit. Others who basically made the comment that zero fare with zero buses doesn't really help. What they need is more service. And so what came out of that cities of the first and second class caucus was maybe instead of the state paying for zero fare, the state provides some grant money for transit, and communities could apply for that grant money and figure out what makes sense in their community that would increase transit ridership. And in one community that might be zero fare for certain parts of the population, and another community that could be a shuttle service or partnering with a business or something that makes more sense in their community. And you do these pilot programs that gives data sets that can inform future expansion. So Mayor Ramsey and I have already brought those ideas that came from our members up at the full growth and transportation meeting. And now those subgroups already have meetings scheduled the rest of this month for both the growth and transportation and the CHOP. Last week at the full CHOP meeting, they created these 3 subgroups, which are a little different than what they've done in the past. So on the policy side, that will be, that has more local government representation than ever before. And then Carson will be representing the league on the funding and the data side. This will be the first time ever that they have a data subgroup. And it's something we've been begging for years. But as they build out the housing database, we're really hopeful that a lot of the data sets that Carson has collected over the last couple of years will inform that statewide database and tell more of a full story of what's happening on the level or on the local level. So let me pause here. Or just, do you want anything on the water stuff before we pause?
No, I do. Can you jump to the next slide really quick though? I just want to talk about the timeline.
Yeah.
Before we, so one of the things that's the UEOC sets their own timeline, but because the UEOC cannot pass a bill, they can recommend a bill, they can't pass a bill. And so their goal is to really get things to the interim committees in September and October and November, so that we have bills that have passed both through the UEOC and through an interim committee. So when we get to the session in January, these things are basically done. That's the goal. Now, I will say that's kind of been the goal the last 2 years too. And week 5 of the session, we're still negotiating on some of these bills. So I'm not overly saying that it's going to happen on every case, but they are trying to be very aggressive with the timeline. So by the end of this month, on May 31st, their goal is to have all of their priorities set for the work groups. So we're not brainstorming anymore. We know what we're going to tackle. And then you can see the other dates there, but it's an aggressive agenda, which means some of these big discussions could be hashed out by October, November. Now, again, I don't think they all will be, because Mayor Ramsey has had the distinction of being like the lone no vote on a couple of things the last couple of years, or abstaining from voting on some things, because we haven't gotten to yes on things, but it's an aggressive timeline, and they're trying to get things done, not just big things, they're trying to get big things done in a fairly short order. So I just want everyone to be aware of what that looks like.
Then Nick, can you go to the next slide? The other thing that's unique this year in the UEOC compared to previous years is there's actually more legislator involvement. So the first couple of years, the legislators were the co-chairs of each of these groups, but now there are additional legislators they brought in. So about 30% of the legislature now sits on the UEOC. And so it's a little hard for my old eyes to see. What's listed in bold are the 3 committees that historically we've engaged in with the most: growth and transportation, the CHA, and water. And then you can see the other 3 committees for which we have league representation, but about a third of the legislature is up there. So what you're seeing on this slide is actually the ask at LPC today, because if you have a legislator who's on one of these UEOC subcommittees, our ask is going to be make sure you follow up with them and ask them specifically what they're doing within the UEOC framework, and make sure that there's that dialogue back to City Hall. with growth and transportation, last year was Senator Cullimore and Representative Schultz. Representative Cal Musselman has now taken Representative Schultz's spot there. Housing affordability hasn't changed, but water and natural resources has a decidedly Northern Utah feel, right, Justin?
Well, it has a decidedly Northern Utah feel for the chairs.
Yes.
For the participating legislators, there's a bit of a Central Utah bend there.
That is also true.
Yeah, there's a lot of rural.
It's a little coal country there.
Yeah, there's very specific legislators there.
Yeah. But then for women in the economy, innovation, technology, and efficiency, we see the breakdown of who's involved in those different pieces. So with that being said, Nick, we go to the next slide. This next slide, again, is the LPC slide, but these were the 4 questions we put in the board packet. So let me actually pause. Are there any just general questions about the UEOC before we talk about these questions? Any questions about the UEOC process? Basically how the pieces fit together?
See any?
So Nick, can you go back to the packet? It has these same questions, but it just has the. So then our request then of the board, again, we'll come back to the overarching board principles momentarily, but we have the prism here that we use for all legislation, but recognizing that there are a lot of moving parts in the UEOC. We as staff have put together these 4 questions that one of the pieces we heard back from you as a board, and we've also heard from the membership, is basically help us communicate with legislators, like help us with the icebreaker, right? So it's not just go talk to your legislators and pick the topic, it's go talk to your legislators and have this general direction when there's not a bill. It's easy to say, go talk to a legislator about SB 295 because it's a bill, you can read it, your staff can read it. But when there aren't bills yet, what are the icebreakers in this space? So that's what we've tried to accomplish with these 4 questions. And we try to keep them simple so they're easy for people to remember on the fly. 2 are how questions, so they're more open-ended, and then 2 are just yes/no questions. The first 2 questions that are the hows, how does this proposal preserve the quality of life of current and future residents? So keeping quality of life as the focus. The second is how does the proposal allocate the cost of infrastructure? This could touch on a variety of infrastructure related pieces, but again, it's trying to spur that discussion with state leaders. And then the yes/no questions are first, question number 3, will the proposal result in more housing units that are more directly affordable to the buyer or rental? So a true nexus to affordability. And then 4th is, will the proposal result in more home ownership? So the underlying principles are quality of life, infrastructure, affordability, and home ownership, which when we go back to the general feedback we've heard from the membership, we think is consistent with the key items that we've heard through the surveys and Slido and the like. But our question for you as a board are we hitting the right mark here for the engagement with the UEOC and related bodies?
I'll just say that the thing that I like about those questions is that they reflect, I guess, the things that we hear from legislators, right? The things that they're trying to accomplish about housing affordability, but yet a lot of the things the ideas that are put forward don't seem to have any nexus to that at all. So I think bringing the legislature back to the focus on these issues, which really are what the goals of what all of our goals are, is powerful. Actually, it gets rid of a lot of the bad bills that don't move the needle on the things that we're trying to do.
I think it's a good list. Again, the one thing I wonder if we ask about infrastructure is, quality and longevity. I mean, some of these dids and lids proposals that have been floating around really have me concerned, and I know you're trying to negotiate more city oversight of those if that moves forward. Again, the cost of infrastructure are critical, but also, is it going to last the amount of time that infrastructure should last? I don't quite know how allocate the cost, and I'm trying to think of a good way to say that, but and longevity or integrity or, I
You
mean,
want to make sure there's a refresh built into it, because we have to replace infrastructure on some cadence, depending on what it is. Is that gonna help us build
but
those
again,
reserves
also
for
if
that
it's,
refresh?
if it's cheaply done to start with, you know, you're gonna pay for that sooner rather than later because it just won't
Yeah.
last.
It's building and maintaining, we need to, I like that, looking at the long term of it.
Yeah, maintaining is a good word. Replacing eventually.
So how does the proposal allocate the costs of building,
Building,
maintaining,
maintaining and replacing
replacing
infrastructure.
infrastructure?
That's actually,
I like that.
if that's not getting too long, but I think it broadens it just a little bit that it's.
And we consider these four within context of our PRISM questions,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yep.
didn't want to repeat the prism. We also know, like, if at some point you have 400 questions you're asking of every bill and the legislator tunes you out, but that's why you'll notice this was growth-related policy because the prism's really high level.
Mhm.
And ultimately, every question should start with, how does this respect the role of cities? What's the problem you're trying to solve? But then really narrow drill down into the details.
Again, some of the things that, some of the decisions they're making, they're just fast, let's get it done fast. And if you look back at that quality of life and some of the things like, what, you know, how is this gonna be impacting us down the road?
Mhm.
I think it was-
And I think one of the benefits of questions like these is if you're not the legislator running the bill, you don't always necessarily have a lot of background on it. But this gives you as a legislator questions you can ask if you're in a committee meeting or somewhere else. Say, you know, legislator, you're running this bill, explain to me how or so in home ownership. So I think this gives our members something to help their legislators with, not just drill down on questions that they may not know the answer to.
I think Seth has a hand up.
Seth?
I think some of the wording there on question 2, would you like to have it parallel question number 1? Where you use the word current and future? So how does the proposal allocate costs of infrastructure today and into the future? Or something like that to keep some parallelisms between those two.
So how does the proposal allocate the cost of current and future infrastructure?
Something like that.
And then we still can work in the building, maintaining, the nice thing about if you did current and future, I think that generally gets to building, maintaining, and
Mhm.
replacing.
Yeah, I think so. It's two ways of saying the same thing.
Again, it's just, you know, quality, you know, do you build a road with, you know, really good road base and really good depth of asphalt, or you just build a cheap road that's gonna come apart, or, you know, is your. That, I mean, that works, I think.
What if we also, Mayor Daines added an adjective that says something like, how does the proposal allocate the cost of current and future sustainable infrastructure?
Yeah.
Right, is that the right word?
That would work. Again, you don't want to get too long either, I get that, so. I think either way.
But she's right, though, the start of it is just as critical as anything. With a solid base versus, you know, something less.
Okay.
Again, that's my concern with the dids and lids. You know, we've had in the past, the city permitted PUDs, which kind of let developers decide what the, you know, what the quality of the road was, what the quality of the infrastructure was. And now, you know, those groups, they didn't form HOAs, they didn't keep up on the maintenance. Now they want the city to take them back. And our position is, well, if you bring them up to city standards, we can take them, but sometimes it's not even possible to bring them up to city standards. So. Again, just sometimes build in haste, repent in leisure, but.
So, Mayor, writing as we go here, what about we're reframing number 2 to say, how does the proposal allocate the current and future costs and ensure sustainability of infrastructure? So then it's allocating the costs and ensuring sustainability of infrastructure.
I think that captures it.
Yeah.
Does that work? Is there any other point that we're missing of these four questions to drive our growth related discussions and deliberations this summer? Or are these the main points?
Good.
Well, if these are the main points, then I think let's have a motion to adopt them, and I can reread the change to number 2.
All right, go ahead and do that, and then I'll look for a motion.
Okay, so number 2, it would say, how does the proposal allocate the current and future costs and ensure sustainability of infrastructure?
I move approval of the 4 items listed with Cameron's changes as noted.
Thank you. Motion by Mayor Daines. Your second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? And then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, we'll present those to LPC today with homework assignments to have these conversations with legislators over the next few weeks. And then as all of the different league reps are in meetings, as appropriate, we can be raising these questions as part of those deliberations. So Mayor, in that case, we've approved the draft of UACO questions. So we started big, we narrowed down, let's back up again and make sure we've covered the board of directors objectives for this upcoming year. So part two, we talked briefly about part 1 on the advocacy side, but Molly, can you just take a moment to talk about the strategic shift that you're making with the communications piece, and in large part based on the feedback you've heard from this group?
Yeah, so previously we've had a communications director that's had a lot of kind of traditional media experience. Folks who have come from news agencies or who have worked a lot with traditional media. And a lot of the feedback we've received from our members and that we've just kind of noticed in-house is that we need someone with a skill set that can be more focused on actual member engagement and member communication. And that we don't necessarily need someone with more of that kind of PR background who gives us kind of media connections. Cam and Justin have enough of those that we can rely on them when we do need it. And so it seems like we could better capitalize on what we're doing with this position if we made a bit of a pivot. And so what we've posted it as is a marketing communications manager. I'm not sure that's necessarily like the title will land on once we hire someone, but that's what we wanted to do to cast the net. And that is going to get us someone who has more technical experience, like technical copywriting, helping us kind of distill the complex things that are going on at the Hill, get it for someone who we can send out to our members, making sure that we have really effective and efficient email communications, covering kind of those basics of graphic design, stuff like that. So we're pivoting that to, again, be less of an external communications piece and more of an internal communications piece between the league and membership. And I know Tani was on the call. Tani was really helpful in helping guide some of that, as well as some other folks who've been working with. So thanks, Tani.
Well, Councilmember, every one of the lines that we quoted you in the board packet on here was give me some memes and I'll use them.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of that skill set we're looking for in this position. So it's not an additional staff person, it's a repurposing of that existing staff person to try to build out that skill set in a slightly different way. And we're also hoping that, one of the pieces that came up from multiple board members was how do we engage at a grassroots level with the public on bills? And that's a different skill set than what we've had in the past. And so hopefully a new focus for this communications person can help build that out.
Yep. And I guess just to end with that, We posted it last week, and so if you know anyone who is interested in this or who would have a helpful skill set for this, please send them our way.
Molly, do you also want to take a moment on the engagement with the survey report, independent of the communications person, but just some of the key takeaways we heard from the members on overall engagement?
Yeah, I think with overall engagement, we are looking at how we can better utilize our trainings and making sure that those trainings are covering topics that folks are interested in learning about. So from our survey, I was able to get a good list of programming topics, and Katie and I are working to figure out what we want to place at annual versus what we want to do with maybe some more casual, kind of like lunch with the leagues throughout the interim. So we've been working on that and trying to figure out, again, how to best give our members the tools they need to like be as effective and efficient as they can be. We got a good spread of different topics people requested, from like general city administration of like city budgets 101 and public finance, learning how to do grant writing, how to be compliant with grandma, city tech solutions, and then land use, obviously huge. We also got a lot coming in on the legislative advocacy side of not necessarily policy issues, but like really driving home what the legislative process is, how to effectively engage with legislators, how to use the bill tracker. And then we also got a good number of requests for the league to do more of like actual professional development, a lot around effective communication, professional writing, and conflict resolution. If you have any topics that you would like us to see that would be helpful for you or your cities, please let me know so we can figure out how to incorporate that as well if we aren't already planning on it. And or if you are a rock star at something and your expertise could really help us, you know, the balance of the membership, let us know that as well. We'd love to put you to work.
Then on the operations side, I think the good news, Nick, was that there was relatively little discussion on operations compared to advocacy and engagement.
I was going to say that we really had to get people off of operations to focus on advocacy, but no, that is a good sign for me that there isn't something that we're obviously doing wrong on how we're running this organization. The one comment we did have was help small cities with their operations, which really, from my lens, is an engagement type thing, because we could that would actually be helping engaging with our members and providing that type of training like Molly described. But yeah, we've over the past 5 years, we've modernized how we operate. Our transparency has increased, and I was excited to see that no one was like, "You're doing this wrong." So if anyone does think there's something that we're doing wrong internally in our operations, I mean, we've made it so that we're approving dues earlier, so we can get those out to folks earlier, and little adjustments like that that would make how folks engage, how we operate would make it easier for our members to engage. We are all ears and always happy to hear that.
Perfect. So speaking of operations, we'll be pivoting to the tentative budget here in just a few minutes. Justin, you want to just take a moment to give the overview of the different topics that we've heard thus far from the members, recognizing there's about 5 years worth of work on that list alone?
Yes, Marissa, I know we even start on this one. A lot of potential topics. I don't think I'll jump too deeply into some of them. I get the question I'll ask. I mean, you can scan through the list, and it's things that you'd expect to be there, things we've talked about recently. But I get the question I'll ask is there anything that is missing from the list that you feel like is something we should be tackling? Something that's come up. I will say there are a few items I think that even in the last week, issues that we were dealing with at the end of the legislative session that didn't pass for various reasons are back. Representative Ballard has her school safety bill that she's already looking to pitch an interim. Representative Jack has his adult themed events bill that's already working its way back through. Nothing is ever done in the legislature. So are there issues that are not on this list that you feel like we ought to be tackling, or things that I will also add, if your city is working on an issue, Mayor, I heard you talking about one of the start of the meeting here. Please let us know. It's always good to let us know, give us a heads up that you're working on things early on, instead of us finding out in January and then finding out that there's other cities who have a different take on it and putting us in a weird position. So is there anything missing from the list was the question that I'll come back to.
Under land use housing growth, number one, home ownership. I mean, you give some good reasons for some of the problems, but I think one that hasn't really been examined. I mean, basically you can own multiple properties and still get the residential deduction for housing on your property tax, right? So again, I think that's encouraging some of these investors to come in. It's like, why don't we just give people the residential deduction on one, their one property? And then if it's a business, they're running it like a business, they're making rental income. I don't think they should be getting a residential deduction if it's not their primary residence. They have all these running.
Okay, cool. Got that one down.
This isn't necessarily a policy thing about the legislature, but I just wonder, given the climate and some of the things we've seen, I mean, there was a bill, I think, to require every public body to have a public comment period. Seems like we're running into that with what just happened in St. George. I wonder if municipalities feel equipped to deal with contentious meetings like that. It seems like there are more and more instances where it's difficult to maybe focus on municipal issues, municipal business, given people wanting to raise things that may or may not have any real intersection with what we do. So I don't know if that's a training thing that we need to help.
That's something, sorry.
No.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I was able to chat with Tammy Piper for a while over the weekend. They've been getting a lot of cities reaching out to them saying, how do we do this? And that's like our next step, is to figure out how we do this. And so we're trying to figure out what exactly that looks like. And I don't know if it's going to be like us rolling out like case studies and tests in different cities that want to participate or what, but I do think that there is a lot of interest in that. And another one that came up that was in the request was to kind of how to keep national politics out of your council meeting. And so I think there's some good opportunity there. I know that there's a lot of people and a lot of interest in achieving all those things, but we kind of need to be the model for how to do it. Like no one's done it yet. And so I think it's challenge and an opportunity.
I mean, about it being on the issue and on the community, the size of the community, I think that weigh into this, but I think there may be folks that are looking for like some tips about how to deal with situations if they do in fact come up, like this, because I think frankly, a lot of us would be nonplussed by that kind of stuff. And when you get faced with an unruly people that won't yield to the civic dialogue, right, then that's a problem in terms of how to deal with that. And I mean, recessing meetings is not something that is very efficient in terms of our time of trying to get stuff done, but sometimes that's the tool you got.
So on the interim agenda for government ops is protection of elected officials, which I think is intended to start a dialogue really about some of the threat state legislators face, which Councilor McKay has some thoughts about how that's impacted her household. But when I've talked to people in the past, they've seemed a little resistant to adding cities to the discussion. Like they've seemed, sometimes I feel like there's a disconnect between the threats the legislature feels like they have faced or the threats that they've received in email or that get investigated when somebody is maybe engaged in some stalking behavior. And when I raised some of the things I know colleagues at the municipal level have faced around the state, it seemed like they haven't been as interested in including us in that discussion. And that's, a really adjacent issue to how we handle the discourse in an open and public meeting. I do think we are paid these awesome big salaries, the pointy end of public discourse, but there's
I think
obviously
that's
a balance.
ultimately what we're facing though, because because the positions that we hold generally are not compensated well, and if it becomes difficult to do it, it's just like, why should I do it? Why should I expose my family to this kind of abuse? Why should I, be involved? And that's a sad day.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it appears that the state is going to have a discussion.
Mhm.
And they've resisted kind of including us at our level. And I think we are all probably huge defenders of First Amendment, but also that this, everyone has had those days where you wonder if you want to continue in this.
But
Service
if you
as
can
a
win the
public
fight,
fighting back.
if you can win the dignity versus contempt fight, I mean, that's a place to start, I think, and try to, but there are some folks that will be receptive to that kind of a message and other people that just won't be, that's what we've seen, I think, with Mayor Randall. What a challenge,
One council member, I'll add that I actually just got a text this morning from a reporter we've been chatting with about the Dignity Index, looking for examples of public employees, so not necessarily elected, but public employees that are taking unprecedented abuse from the public. And we've heard from several cities who have had public employees abused and harassed by angry members of the public in a way that's never really happened before. So we're trying to facilitate that information getting out publicly to help it. I agree, adding that to our list in the interim makes sense. So, Councilmember.
I totally agree. I was going to kind of change the subject, so I want to make sure that we're done with that. But it was listed above just training for our planning commission. And I agree that that's something really important. Even we were hoping as a council to bring some of those decisions after our planning commission that isn't as experienced as we would hope, made some decisions that got some residents really angry. And there was a bill that kind of prevented the council from taking some of those decisions, especially for really large housing development or, a lot of square footage for commercial. And so that was a little bit frustrating. But then also one other idea, I really enjoyed the tour of Switch Point, and I would love to hear Carol Holloway speak either to a women's group, but especially about the homelessness. She, after that tour, I left feeling inspired and like, what can I do to help? And I think that she had an interesting take on the homeless, not just the sheltering part, but how do we get them re-entered into society and stuff. So I really appreciated that tour. I wish it would have been a full bus instead of just a van, got that opportunity.
I agree with that.
It was very good, yeah.
Well, as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we plan to bring the final list of priorities in June. So recognizing we want to make sure there's enough time for the tentative budget, we can come back to this if the tentative budget piece goes quickly, but.
Well, and yeah, if as always, if you don't think of something during the meeting or you think of something after, please reach out to us and let us know. I thought about this thing, or I heard this thing during interim or whatever it may be. I was talking to, Representative so-and-so, and they brought this up. Please let us know. It's an ongoing discussion. This isn't your speak now or forever hold your peace moment. Next month will be.
Yes, with the caveat that there are a bunch of meetings already scheduled for later this month. So everything that's highlighted in yellow are items that have already come up in the UEOC subgroup discussion. So again, you can, on the training ideas and engagement ideas, funnel those through Molly. On policy topic ideas, funnel those through Justin. And I wanted to approve the board of directors objectives, but I think maybe I'll press pause on that to make sure we start the tentative budget piece on time, and we can come back to the board objectives. So are there any other questions on, or any other input on what you gave us in April and kind of our summary back to you, because that does inform the tentative budget here in a second. So any other questions on, or anything we missed in this memo?
Plenty, looks good.
Yeah, there's plenty, right? Yep, there's plenty.
Plenty in there.
So part 3 of the board objectives, we'll come back to that. Let's switch over to tentative budget. And so Nick, as you're pulling that up, we're going to tag team. Oh, no, we're not doing tentative budget. Sorry, do the fraud risk assessment, then we'll do tentative budget.
Excellent. So you have included in your packet here what we will submit to the state auditor's office, as well as our insurers. This is the fraud risk assessment that every public entity is required to complete every year. It is the same template for every size of entity, and this will be the third year of us completing this. Last year, this is the same checklist as last year. We've made no changes to policy, and we are still in the very low category. It was last year when we created an official finance and audit committee that bumped us from that low to very low standing. So we will submit this with your approval, we will submit this to the state auditor's office. I also got word this year that our insurer, the Utah Local Governments Trust, for the crime insurance, is only accepting entities with a very low score. And they're running into some issues there, seeing how many people that they will be insuring. But we are in that category, so we are looking good. And this is signed by both Cameron and myself, certified by us. And we just like to have that additional step of letting the board see it and having it approved by the board.
Yeah, so if are there any questions about the fraud risk assessment? I think you've checked all the boxes that you can reasonably check. We could ask all of us to do the district board member training, which I think a lot of us probably have done. But other than that, I don't know if that would move the needle on making us be lower risk or not, but.
It would get us more leeway in the very low category, yes. So that is definitely something we can look at doing, and kind of the process of how we, as an entity, would certify. I think we could tell everyone to complete it, bring it to a meeting, and then have the board chair certify that everyone's completed that.
Yeah, I think an email just asking us, have you completed it? If you have either the certificate you get from the test or you know, some evidence that says that they've done it, that might help. It's worth considering.
Yeah.
I assume cities are trying, I mean, some cities track this, each city does an assessment too.
Well, it's in addition to the open to public meetings training. This one is like an.
Yeah, this is special district training. And so if you sit on the board of another district, then some of it's required to be done there. So a lot of us have done it. And that's what I'm
If you're in a
saying.
mosquito abatement or a rec district or.
Well, let's follow up, Nick, with board
Yeah, let's
members,
follow up
who's
with
done
that,
it,
yeah.
and then we can get a sense of
All right.
what
In the
the burden
meantime,
will be on board members.
Yeah, let me ask for a motion to approve the fraud risk assessment. Separation of duties.
No move.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Got that. Check. So then, tentative budget.
Perfect. On the tentative budget, we want to actually separate this discussion into two pieces. Piece one being an overview of the local administrative advisor program, which passes through the league. And so it shows up on the budget document because we'll be tracking those ongoing state dollars, but recognizing that it is very much separate from our general fund that funds the operations and personnel and programming of the league. Molly, can you just take a moment to give everyone a quick update on local administrative advisor and where we're at as of now and what starts July 1?
Yeah, so the money starts July 1, most notably. So come July 1, about $1.5 million will pass through the league. Well, 1.2 of that will pass through the league to the AOGs. About 300,000 will stay with the league to fund kind of the centralized component of the local administrative advisor program. For those who may be new or may just not remember, since it was going on with the fog of session, the local administrative advisor is an ongoing appropriation we received in partnership with the AOGs and collaboration with UCMA to essentially help provide some administrative assistance and guidance for about 140 plus small cities and towns that don't have administrative staff. They're all under 10,000 residents. And so this is a hope. Our hope is that, you know, through this program, we can make sure that these folks are compliant with state law and are kind of have some administrative support to address their most pressing needs. We're working with the AOGs, and Gary and Liam are really involved in this as well. We have a draft job posting that we've created. The AOGs hope is that they can have someone in place starting July 1. We're gonna kind of see how that goes on an expedited timeline, but we're really excited for this program and think it has the potential to be really, really impactful for a lot of rural Utah and rural Utah residents. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, but
So we have a hand up from Seth.
Sorry, that was on the last one, Nick. I can follow up with you on the fraud thing. Sorry.
Excellent.
Recognizing though that that money flows through our budget, and so if you just glance at our budget, it looks like our budget is increasing by 49%. And on paper, that's true, but in actuality, it's not, because so much of those dollars are pass-through dollars. And then, as Molly indicated, the portion that stays at the league is for local administrative advisor program. So it's independent. We can't use that money to, fund our general operations or.
We not get a little bit for administration. costs?
So we're working that out right now to have an administrative fee. Right, yeah. So those are some of the details we're still hammering out so that we can cover some of those costs. And then she mentioned Gary and Liam's involvement. I'll reference actually, this is a good pivot to the conversation about contracts. Because one of the conversations we had in April and then also in previous board meetings was just the size of ULCT staff. And we have both in-house staff and contract staff. Well, in the case of Gary Watcott, he's a contract staffer. And part of the reason we contracted with him was in the hopes that we would get this program funded, because he brings 40 years of city administration experience in a variety of facets. So come July 1, we've modified his contract to where the majority of his salary will be paid for by LAA, because local administrative advisor, the majority of his work will be local administrative advisor. That likewise, when you as a board voted to approve the legal director spot last board meeting, we told you we were repurposing the legislative research analyst role that became available when we promoted Carson to policy director after we had promoted Molly from policy director to deputy director. Well, in an effort to try to secure additional financial flexibility for that position, we actually have terminated a contract that we had. We had a contract with Sean Guzman. That contract is now ending. So that frees up some financial flexibility to invest in staff without creating more and more positions. So I wanted to be able to report back, because there were several questions at the board meeting, like how much are you going to pay this person? How are you going to pay this person? And at the time, we hadn't finished going through all the contract negotiations yet. Now we have. We know we'll still have Roger on contract for next year. We'll have Gary on contract, but 80% of his time will be local administrative advisor. 20% will still be in the policy space. And then with the termination of Sean's contract, that frees up some additional flexibility to invest in that invest in the legal director position, so that rather than recruiting someone fresh out of law school, for example, we can get someone who has more experience and therefore can provide a greater degree of service to the membership. So let me pause there before I turn it over to Nick to walk through the budget, the tentative budget. But any questions about local administrative advisor or the staffing therein? Okay, Nick, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Cam. So like Cam explained, you'll see our budget for next year in total is increased 49.37%. That is with LAA. Our, and I'm hesitant to use the term general fund, but our general revenues, which include grant and special project revenues, the rest, not LAA, is an increase of 6.83%. Look around here. So we'll walk through this general revenue category. The general revenue, which is everything else but grant and special projects.
Stand down so people can follow.
Yep. Thanks. Need an extra arm or something here. Okay. That is an increase of 6.96%, about 7% in our general revenue. Now the board voted in January to increase the sales tax portion of our dues formula and keep the property value and population factors the same. That was part of a the second part of a two-step process to get our dues to cover 95% of our personnel and non-conference operations. That decision was made in January, and we, this budget that we've laid out here accomplishes that goal of dues covering 95%. A little update there. So we sent the dues invoices out in March, and we currently have 147 out of 255 who have already paid. And these aren't even, they don't start to be due until July 1. So that's actually a really good percentage so far. Also, in other portions of that general revenue, we do expect a slight increase to our registration fees. That is because we'll be holding an additional event. Every 2 years, we do our elected officials essentials training. Is nowhere near the type of registration revenue we collect from our larger conferences, but we do collect some nonetheless. We expect comparable levels to the 2023 budget in our sponsorships and the interest we're receiving from the PTIP. In grant and special project revenue, there aren't a lot of changes there. You'll see a slight increase, and that's because the Your Land, Your Plan public asset program, that was a 2-year, $500,000 grant from Intermountain Health. We don't expect to spend the first half of it fully in this fiscal year, so the rest of that will be spent in the next fiscal year. It's also the last year, if you remember a couple of years back, we did a special assessment around ARPA to do an assistance program there. And as that program itself winds down and our assistance with it, those funds will wind down as well. On to expenses. In personnel, you'll see that the total personnel increase is just over 5%. That includes staff salaries, staff benefits, and contract labor. And as Cam mentioned, you'll see a reduction in contract labor that we were helping, that is kind of being shifted into staff salaries, moving from contract legal help to in-house. This budget includes merit-based and market-based increases and to compensation for existing staff. As Cam mentioned, we have 2 open positions out right now, and we want some flexibility to be competitive in hiring those positions. And like I said, we shifted that contract labor into salaries. So you see just over 5% there. In operations and engagement expenses, we actually have a slight reduction in what we're spending, which we're happy to report. We're maximizing the limited funds we have, keeping our operational costs as low as possible. Within this, we are still able to invest in staff. You'll see an increase to staff professional development and training. And in this current fiscal year, FY23, we were able to take on some overdue facility projects that we had. So we're able to lower that building repairs section in the 2024 budget. Big increases that we are seeing outside of that 95% we discussed the personnel and non-event operations are our event expenses. And we saw those increase last year. We're seeing them increase as well this year. It's just under 20% increase. The event industry is still trying to recoup from COVID and the current inflationary environment and the labor market that they're dealing with. Their costs are just going up overall. For this year's annual convention, we are moving, we're in the Salt Palace still, but we're moving the space that we're in, which should accommodate us a little better, have our exhibit hall close to everything just a little more contained. And so those costs have increased with that shift. So we will be considering adjustments. We can't just let that continue at conferences go up 20% every year. So we're looking at how we're going to the timeframe layouts and where in the Salt Palace facility we'll be hosting those events in future years.
Nick, can I ask, sorry, it's a little off of the budget, but there have been some comments from some of the vendors that I'm connected with that they don't get as much visitor attendance down in the spot they're in.
Yeah.
Will the space we're moving to create better flow? I get great reports of flow for St. George and less for Salt Lake.
Yes, and that is the major reason why we made this shift, is trying to figure that out. And Katie can talk a little more about it, but we're going to be stacked, right?
Yeah, so the easiest way to explain it, you have the general session room at the same spot that was last time. Breakouts are right below it, and then across the hall from the breakout room, the exhibit hall, so that also creates a lot better flow between exhibitors and attendees.
So they won't have to change levels to visit the exhibit hall. which I think will, I mean, it's only one set of stairs or an escalator, but it really can have an
Yeah, but
effect
it was
on
weird
dragging
how
people in.
you
Yeah,
had, you know, it was way kind of out of the way. I can see why people didn't get to the exhibit hall.
yeah.
It helps if people put food in there.
Yeah. Oh, the strategies that Katie comes up with, like, okay, the food station is gonna be just behind this and in between, and really a little off topic as well, but mid-year, I noticed that we had where people, not just the food, but where people would sit and eat in different areas, so that kind of spreads the love a little bit too. We used to have it all just in one section, and the exhibitors seem to be very happy with that as well. So we're tweaking every year, trying to make sure everyone's, you know, getting the bang for their buck, both our registrants and the exhibitors, and sponsors who help fund it. In the grants and special projects expenditures, we addressed a lot of that. It's mostly your land, your plan, and IMEs are very tied to their revenue sources. So you see an increase of $12,000 there. This area of the budget also includes our essay contest, which we're going to be out on the road filming later this month, and our Healthy Utah Communities partnership with Get Healthy Utah. Those are some of the types of projects we do within grants and special projects.
Nick, can you scan the document down?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I should have brought in a pen shredder for that.
Should reach over and help you.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we think that the budget you see before you, it fulfills the ULCT mission in a financially responsible way. It gives us the resources we need to invest in our staff while maintaining our operations costs low. As staff, we would ask the board to adopt this tentative budget today, and we will bring the final budget to you, the final FY24 budget to you at our next meeting in June. We would also ask the board now to provide us with any feedback of any sort of adjustment that you think needs to be addressed in this tentative budget so that we can incorporate it into that budget that we'll go over in June. I'm happy to answer any questions about just kind of our thoughts of where we've shifted some things around or any particular line items that you see here. You will see we have two bottom lines on this document. Just so that you can see visually, one includes the state appropriation. Yeah, I should probably get them on school on that. Not stack. There we go. You'll see that includes total expenses without the state appropriation, which is more comparable to what you see every year with that general budget, and then what it is total of what we'll be taking in with the state appropriation for local administrative advice.
Okay, any questions for Nick? If there aren't any, thanks for your work on this, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the tentative budget.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
Yeah, we have a motion and second to approve. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, you got your tentative budget.
Thank you.
I think we're 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
We are. I will do my best not to blow it all. Thank you for the support of the tentative budget. What I'm excited about is this year we're dedicating money for professional development for staff, and we've also increased what we're referring to as our engagement budget. So it's basically the in-state travel budget to make sure that staffers have the flexibility to get out and meet with membership wherever they are. And so trying to meet the core mission of the league, which I think sets up nicely for the board of directors objectives. So when we go back to section 4, part 3, these are the objectives that we started the small group meeting discussion with in mid-year with. And these are objectives that previous versions of the league board have adopted. And we want to essentially do a refresh every spring as you go through the budget process to make sure that we're still aligned with where you as a board see your objectives. Now, we also have staff objectives and goals to meet those objectives, and those are not basically our goals build off of your board goals or your board objectives here.
Cam, it looks like when I sent the Word doc to you, it still included the track changes, but when it converted to PDF, it went away. So I'm just gonna pull up the Word doc.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I was gonna do it from memory, but it'd be easier to have that up. What Nick's bringing up is the fact that based on the April board meeting, we've made a few minor edits, but want to make sure you know what those edits were and that, again, it's still consistent with your policy direction for us. There's six objectives, essentially 2 for advocacy, 2 for engagement, 2 for operations. And so they're broken down by ongoing and term-based, but now that term-based in this fiscal year 2024 budget is there, that would turn into an ongoing piece. So here they are with the track changes. And you'll notice that we proposed amendments to 3 of the 6. So Justin, I'll give you a moment to talk through items 1 and 2, and then Molly. So 1 and 2 are focused on advocacy, 3 and 4 on engagement. So Molly will reference the changes there. And then the nice thing for Nick is operations. We've not proposed any amendments to these 4, 5, and 6. So Justin, 1 and 2.
So I'm going to take them out of order. Provide direction number 2. Provide direction to maximize the political capital at the Capitol. In case you're wondering how you spell those 2 different words, it's right there. For municipalities, because I always have to remind myself. One of the things we have, I know, talked about is really how do we maximize that capital at the Capitol. Someone said something really interesting to me last week. A lobbyist who's been around for a pretty long time. And he said, really legislature, because of the turnover, goes in cycles and you end up seeing a lot of the same issues every 7 or 8 years or so. So the trick is just to remember how you killed it last time. And I think that is one of the things that we do always need to remember is that we talk about the legislature as it's this one body, but this body is made up of 104 different personalities, and all of those personalities have their ideas. So really, that is important for us to think about on an ongoing basis. It's never a job done, that we have to build the relationships and get the capital and build that capital with different groups. That's something we've always got to work on. And then we did tweak this one a little bit. Ensure on number 1, ensure that ULCT policy platforms and priorities, focus on collaboration outcomes and respect the role of municipalities. We've had very good success the last couple of years in getting to some real collaborative outcomes. Cam likes to tell the story that at a meeting we used to be referred to a lot as the League of No, and we were referred to as the League of In the Know, because we're aware of what's going on, or we're at the table on a lot of things. So just a slight tweak on that one to make sure that we can continue collaborating and working on that while still making sure we're respecting that role. So happy to take if there's any input or thoughts on 1 or 2 there.
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things, I think, and there's elsewhere in this document, I think it was from feedback from board members. There was a suggestion that perhaps sometimes we're too nice. And I just want to bring everybody back to perspective. I mean, I think that this organization and our staff and the leadership and all of us that participate in that legislative process have our priorities, and we stick to our guns, except, there are some things when we just know that we're going to get rolled if we don't give on it. And we've been, I think, more successful being collaborative than if we're not. And the relationships that we built with people on the job, and even, Chris Campoulis and people like that, they respect us now. And that gives us an entree to be at the table when some of these policy things are coming down, and to shape them. So yeah, we may not, be perfectly ideologically pure, and that we compromise on some things, but I really do think that collaborative approach that we've adopted is more productive to achieve our goals than just saying we're too nice or not being nice, right? We can be nice and still stick to our guns on the important stuff, and I really think we've done that, and we've done that in a way where we've maintained our political capital at the Capitol. We've maintained our credibility, and I think we're pretty much respected. Not only are we respected from a policy standpoint in terms of having good ideas, but we're also respected that don't mess with the league, because if the action alert goes out, their lives are going to be hacked.
Yes. And Mayor, I think thanks for saying that. And we've got our core principles, respect, collaboration, outcome, and this
this reflects all of those as well.
And that's really the biggest shift on number one, I think, is trying to tie it back to those core principles. So any other thoughts on 1 and 2 for advocacy? Are we there on those two? Okay, then Molly, will you take 3 and 4 and the proposed amendments there?
Sure. So number 3, engage with ULCT membership in geographic regions and or communities of commonality that you represent to unify and elevate them. One thing that we've been working on so far that we have scheduled out is making sure that we're getting out as staff to all of the regions that we represent. Even though most of the population is on the Wasatch Front, we want to make sure that we are getting up to Logan and down to Manti to visit those things, and to know that you as the board are also empowered to, you know, be communicating and representing the league in your respective areas as well. We're working more on partnering with the AOGs. We have an event coming up with 6th County on May 23rd that some of us will be heading down for, that we're pretty excited about. So really just making sure that our engagement is statewide, and that especially during the interim when we have the time, that we are getting out and engaging with those members. And then for the programming, really trying to be mindful, well, I'll read it first. So ensuring that our conferences and trainings are relevant, worthwhile, and productive for all attendees. Really trying to make sure that we are providing some tailored trainings to make sure that we're meeting folks where they are. We have a pretty disparate membership as far as professional staff goes and so forth. And so we have a lot of programming, you know, that's like how to, you know, maybe for a comms person on like how to successfully use social media. And then we have a lot of cities and towns, that's great, we don't have a comms person, right? And so figuring out how to make sure that our programming, we have different levels that it can kind of meet people where they are, so that it can be a beneficial training for everyone. Also working to really make sure that we get some more evergreen trainings and content that are easily accessible online. So like if you want that budgeting 101, it's not just only, you know, once a year annual that you get access to that, but it is something that is just always a resource that the league can provide.
Any thoughts on the 2 engagement objectives for the board?
I have a verb recommendation on number 3. Instead of having engage at the front, I'd love to see a little more active with unify and elevate ULCT members in the geographic. Often,
Yeah.
they can get rid of some of the work.
This is Mary Winch. I just wanted to say that at our last city meeting, everyone was raving about our last 6 county meetings, and I think they have been so appreciated by folks in our 6 county area. So thank you for all of that excellent, especially on the land use training. It's been so helpful. Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Look forward to it.
Nope, we'll be there. Now, we've been chatting with other AOGs. The Bear River AOG does a cash summit, which is similar. And we've chatted with 5 County and with Southeast and others about doing similar events. And then we partner closely with WFRC and hopefully soon with MAG to incorporate their programming into annual at a higher level.
This is Scott Phillips in Cedar City. I just wanted you to know that I have met one time for some of the folks in my region, some of the city council members and mayors from Hilldale and Tokerville and Rockville and Springdale and Canaraville, just trying to get to know them, get to know some of their issues, since I try and represent this region on the board. And we're having a follow-up meeting on June 11th here in Cedar City.
That's great.
Thanks, Scott. That's what we want to hear. That's what good board members do. It's awesome.
Well, and council member, if you would like a lead staffer to join you, whether it's the June meeting or future, just let us know, because we also try to provide that for you as you're doing those types of regional meetings.
Great, thank you.
One of the things, I just talk about the 6 county one again, and invite anybody that wants staff or me or whatever to come to one of those. I mean, the way that was structured down there, it's almost like it almost is like an education thing. It's a bunch of different breakout sessions where people can go and get their questions answered. It's really more focused on answering questions than giving a presentation even. That's the focus of it, is answering questions. So there's stuff on budgeting and lots of different disciplines there. But I think that is something, especially for smaller communities that may not have staff to come to those things. I think it's good, and you get an exchange of ideas that goes on when those questions are asked and answered, and people are helping contribute about what they do in their towns and things like that. I think it's useful. So if others want to try to organize something like that, I think it's worthwhile.
Perfect. Molly, do you have an update on number 3 based on the council member suggestion? Can you rewrite number 3 based on the suggestion to say unify and elevate the membership?
Oh, sure.
So can I ask you to work on that while Nick presents 5 and 6, just to rewrite, and then we can have a motion to approve.
Sure.
Approve the 6. So Nick, 5 and 6.
5 and 6, plain and simple, no changes, but to ensure the league operations are accountable, efficient, and transparent. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want those to exist, and I think we've been successful in that. And then term-based objective of having membership dues cover 95% of ongoing non-conference operations and personnel costs by fiscal year 2024. With the changes to dues that we made in January, that is accomplished by fiscal year 2024. For the upcoming fiscal year, I think that makes sense. I think when we come back to these in a year, we may just want to get rid of the fiscal year 2024. And with some of our shifts in event costs and revenue, we may at some point want to look at what that percentage is, because that 5% is essentially being subsidized by our events revenue. So yeah, no changes there. And I think they're worthwhile operational goals at the board level.
Any thoughts on items 5 and 6? Okay, so in that case, Molly, do you have
Yes.
a new number 3 for us?
Yeah, unify and elevate ULCT membership in geographic regions and or communities of commonality.
That's cleaner. Okay.
Okay,
so-
then if there isn't any other discussion about any of these things, I'll look for a motion to approve these objectives.
Actually,
Motion.
can I make a suggestion on that really quickly on this as I'm looking at it? We say unify and elevate ULCT membership as a whole, as well as in, so that we are a unified membership, not just unified in our geographic areas.
Extension of tribes.
Exactly.
Loosely
Yeah,
coordinated.
yeah.
I think we can say that.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
It'll be okay.
you want to make a motion?
So moved. I can do that.
I felt the motion. Yes.
You felt it?
Yeah,
I would move. Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve these objectives as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that direction, and you'll see that reflected in the tentative budget. I'm excited. We should end a few minutes earlier. So the executive director report, a few quick items. Number 1 is National Police Week. So please make sure that you thank your officers, but also we'll do some social media posts, but hopefully you can also spread that word to the general public about it being National Police Week to demonstrate that support.
Law enforcement week.
I thought it was, is it
I
law?
think it's National Law
No,
Enforcement.
today is National Peace Officer Day.
Today is National Peace Officer Memorial Day.
National Peace Officer Memorial.
I think it's law enforcement because it includes sheriffs and police.
Law
Enforcement.
Law Enforcement Week. Okay, perfect. Well, no, and that's good clarification before we do our social media posts. So we'll make sure that that's done appropriately. We didn't spend much time on the public safety policy space, but Gary Watcott was out for a good chunk of this meeting because he was on the Law Enforcement Legislative Committee meeting that was happening at the same time. gathering input of what's going to be discussed in that space. So that's why come June, we'll be better prepared to come back to you and say, here's how we're recommend the policy priorities, because there will be a decent amount in the public safety space. It's still being formulated like everything else this spring. The second item, you'll see guiding our growth, and we had a link to one of the paid sponsor articles that guiding our growth, put in all of the newspapers and news article or news media last week. Justin and I were there representing the league at the press event, but this survey is open through the end of August around guiding our growth.
And that was a great article, and I do my mayor newsletter, and put a link to that, so
Oh,
people
cool.
want to go to it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to publicize this to the media channel so that we get a good response on this statewide. I think it's really important that rural communities do that as well, because some of these, I mean, these issues, we all face them, but, and so, you know, the questions on this survey have kind of been like selected for different communities of interest. So if you know, at the beginning of the survey indicate that you live in a smaller community or rural community, you're going to get a different set of questions than if you live in a place. And that's only just because there are differences in terms of the size and scale of multifamily housing and things like that between rural and urban. But we're all facing growth issues, and I think this will be valuable to the legislature and policymakers. It's also valuable, I think, as an education tool, so that a lot of our residents understand what we're trying to do as we plan to manage the growth that we're inevitably facing. So push it out.
Well, Mayor Silvestrini, I want to emphasize two things from the press conference, which I think are noteworthy for us as an organization. One, even though there are lots of organizations that have been involved in building out guiding our growth, there are only 3 that were mentioned by name by the governor and his team, and we were one of those 3. In fact,
we lobbied heavily for the funding for this.
We did, but even just the overall partnership, we've been very active at providing our 2 cents. Now, those 2 cents sometimes aren't always accepted. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I wrote a 4-page memo to the Guiding Our Growth team with a whole bunch of recommendations of what they needed to do differently on framing and messaging and the like. And they're accepting some of them, they're not accepting others. But the fact is that we're very much at the table with them. The second thing is that when Laura Hansen spoke, and she's the point person for it, you know, Laura's come to lead conferences, and we've tried to incorporate her as much as possible. And she made it very clear that this effort was not about replacing local planning, it was to support local planning. And that, again, is a large part because of our push that we can think regionally, but still act locally and preserve the ability, reflect the ability of local governments to plan their communities. So I was asked by Ben Winslow in his post-press conference interview if I thought the legislature was going to listen to cities as part of this effort. And my response, Mayor Silvestrini, was similar to what you just said, that they funded this collaborative effort because we were pushing for it, and we were optimistic that this was going to be a collaborative effort. So please share it with your cities, and if you have thoughts on what they could do better or changes or really anything, just know we meet with Laura on a regular basis. I've already seen her this morning. I'll see her again tomorrow. So, you know, send us information. We'll make sure it gets back to Laura and to her team. I mentioned we'll see her tomorrow. I'll come back to that in 1 second. The next point on the executive director report is that we participate in the Utah Coalition for Clean Air. They're having their gala event next week, and we have purchased with WFRC a table because they're honoring Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall. So we wanted to be there to support a fellow mayor. Between WFRC and the league, we have a table, so we have a couple of spots. If anybody wants to attend that lunch event, it'll be next Thursday at Rice Eccles Stadium. So that's not why we purchased it, for the record. That might be a different event, but just know it.
Is that a lunch?
It's a lunch. Yeah, it's before the WFRC council meeting. Mayor Ramsey and I will be at a UEOC meeting during that time. But we have a couple of spots available on that joint table between WFRC and the league. And then last but not least, National League of Cities. I mentioned we'll see Laura tomorrow because Mayor Silvestrini and I are flying to DC tomorrow, which is a little surprising. Normally we don't go to DC for 2 NLC events in 2 months. This is the first time they've changed the timing of their presidential fly-in event. In years past, we've had a couple of league presidents who've done it. I've never done it because they usually do it during the legislative session, and we're a little busy here. But what this event is, just so everyone is aware, is an opportunity for league directors and league presidents from around the country to have essentially a 24-hour advocacy window in DC. So we'll be meeting, Mayor Silvestrini will be meeting with some of the delegation, and then we'll jointly be meeting with some of the key committees that deal with local government issues. Also we'll be meeting at the White House about ARPA, the infrastructure bill, and other things. So we'll be able to report back if it's worthwhile or not, because again, we've never been able to go as a tag team. The timing worked out this year that we were able to go. The other thing that we requested, and they have accepted, is we wanted to follow a briefing on the housing accelerator.
We have some re-education to accomplish.
Mayor Shepherd, are you still on?
He had to jump off.
He was jumping off
Yeah, I knew-
NLC.
Yeah, right. I knew that. I was hoping I could catch him. So Mayor Shepherd represents us on the National League of Cities Board of Directors. And in so doing, he is also one of the people on the NLC Housing Supply Accelerator Group. We reported to you when we got back from DC in April that we had a lot of frustration with how NLC was approaching housing, even using some terminology that came right out of the playbook of some of our adversaries in this space. When we were in DC, I pushed back and actually got a meeting with the NLC director within minutes of him coming off the stage. And Mayor Silvestrini and I requested having a follow-up meeting with key NLC staff in this space. So they've added that to the 24-hour event. So just as an FYI, I don't think I've even told you that yet. And then the Oregon director texted me this morning asking when that meeting was going to be so she could make sure she's there. Right, yeah, so we're working through that, but we'll report back on whether that's worthwhile. But Mayor Shepherd has been attending those meetings. Carson attended the first Supply Accelerator meeting online. And we may end up sending Carson to, or me to a couple of these NLC housing meetings. Again, just to make sure that we are in the room and urging the respect of local control through this process. That is my executive director report. And final note is that at the June meeting, we will not hold LPC in June. Today at LPC, we're going to be asking for work groups on different key topics. And then we'll meet with you as a board in June to prioritize topics and to finish the budget. And then we'll revisit or we'll reconvene with LPC in August as all the work groups are doing that work and keep people appraised electronically and work closely with those work groups. But the June meeting, because we won't have LPC, we have a little more time. And so we'll be meeting at Mill Creek Commons since we don't have to get to the trust. So we'll meet in the presidential city.
And following this meeting, just look for that calendar invite change. I'll change the address on it so you can forget about it for now and look at your calendar invite right before and know where to go.
Yeah, so I look forward to having you there. So at LPC, I'm going to be there for like the first 15 minutes to open the meeting up, but then I'm meeting with the Lieutenant Governor at WFRC for a meeting, I guess, about growth. And so I don't know if you're going to need somebody else to take the chair. I know that Mayor Fusi and Mayor Ramsey are not available. So
Yeah, Ramsey's on the plane.
I guess we'll need someone to adjourn the meeting. Yeah.
And
We'll need someone to adjourn.
and to ask for the approval of the work groups.
Yeah.
And that would just be a board member, right?
anybody here want to volunteer to do that?
We'll be there in person.
You will be
I
there.
will be there. When you get down with Jason, make it closer to me.
As well. It's almost about, right?
Right.
It's like for an annexation.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for your time today, and thank you for the approval of the tentative budget and for the direction on UEOC and board objectives. And thank you for your service to the communities. This is a tricky time for everybody with your budgets coming due and school getting out of session and everything else. So thank you for your time.